The heat is broken here in New York. It was over 90 earlier today, and then it was like a massive thunderstorm, and now it's cooled off. Jimmy, JoAnne, how you guys doing?
Doing good.
Hot, sticky.
We're very hot here.
I bet. Texas, I'm sure there's a saying for whatever the temperature is right now.
Yeah, I just can't repeat it.
Not in polite company, at least. But
Sure.
wonderful to have you both back. We're going to be doing, of course, our sponsor exclusive show at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, but there's some big news coming from Benghazi, Libya. JoAnne, you were telling me a bunch of stuff. What's going on? What have we heard from the tribes?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff going on in Libya. Erdogan is pushing to start a war. He wants to control not only Libya, but he wants all the airspace over Tunisia and Algeria, and
Egypt.
then he will go to Egypt. He wants the Ottoman Empire back. If you look at a map of the Ottoman Empire, it was all of North Africa plus a whole lot of Europe. And he has been doing some real nasty tricks, like, for example, using NATO private call signs to get through the blockade to bring in, there's a blockade from bringing an embargo,
to preclude him from being able to
bring weapons and mercenaries in. And the
Wait,
French
what do you mean private call signs? Well, I don't understand what that means.
NATO has call signs or numbers or whatever that
they change them constantly.
Yeah, when a ship wants to get through, they can give these call signs. That means they're a member of NATO, they're okay, they get through, that kind of thing. And Erdogan, who is a member of NATO, has been using those. France stopped one of the Turkish ships and said we need to inspect it. And they had they
fired on it.
Yeah, they almost had a war over that ship.
Wow.
And NATO did not stand up for France. The other NATO ships in the Mediterranean did not stand up for France. So France pulled out. And then France went to NATO and filed a complaint, and they are demanding that NATO remove Turkey from their alliance.
Wow.
And it's a nasty game that's going on, Jason. There's a whole lot of countries that are secretly supporting Erdogan behind the scenes, like up front. They're declaring, "Oh, we're not going to help him. He's a bad guy," but they're still shipping him weapons and technology and everything like that, including the United States.
Wow.
And there's a really interesting event that happened in Turkey. Has been setting up their largest military base outside of Turkey on the west side of Libya,
right on the Tunisian border. That's that Al Watia base that they put their ships out, and fired on the Libyan National Army and just started killing them. So the Libyan National Army left because they had no defense against what Turkey was doing, actually illegally, against the embargo, against everything.
But what happened is Turkey moved massive amounts of hardware and everything in there. They put in the latest U.S. missile defense system in there, the very latest, most sophisticated, and they were just about to flip the switch. They moved in. Erdogan has appointed one of his generals to be the military governor of Libya, and laid down all kinds of draconian measures. The Libyans going to have to kiss their feet and their ass and everything else. I mean, terrible. And so up jumps the devil, and was it 2 days ago?
It was on the 3rd, I think.
From high altitude bombing, they wiped that base completely out.
All the missile defense systems were destroyed. And
you know how we've been saying forever that the U.S. Systems are no good, they're outdated and everything? Well, now the U.S. is asking, how did this happen? How did our missile systems get blown up?
The Pentagon is saying it today.
We never saw it. Nobody ever
This is not right. This is the best missile defense system in the world, and we didn't see these planes coming. How did that happen? And Erdogan is pissed, and he has demanded NATO to retaliate on whoever did it, because they're not. The LNA took credit for it. I'm not sure they did it, but he's demanding that they take active actions against whoever did that to him. And NATO responded by saying, "We don't protect you outside your country. If you're going into another country, that's your problem.
If you're invading another country, we're not going to
get killed. That's your problem."
So,
hey guys, there's some sort of unusual problem happening where everything is set properly, but we haven't started here on YouTube. I'm not sure what's happening, but let's keep going. And if there's any problem, we'll upload this after the fact. It's important that people know that we're going to be starting our sponsor exclusive show at 8:30 on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moariarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. This is an interesting problem. Everything is set right. I've just checked it, but we aren't going out to YouTube.
Well, we'll get more into depth on what's happening in Libya in our show.
But, you know, the things we've been saying about how ineffective and how worthless the money we spent for our defense systems have been and are. The bad guys own the military-industrial complex. They overcharge for everything. This has been a known event forever. You remember, well, you wouldn't remember, Jason, when you were still wearing diapers, some of the politicians, legitimate politicians, were complaining that a hammer was costing $257.
No, I remember that.
$450.
You remember that?
Okay.
Space shuttle toilet seats were $50,000 and things like that.
So everybody just shut up about that because now all of them are on the take. So no, there's no question. But here we are at $700 and something billion military budget, and we're getting no value for our money. And you've got other countries in the world with 10% of the budget that we have, that are producing the most sophisticated systems, weapons that really work, defensive systems, you know. And so, you know, it just shows again how much of a bunch of pack of liars all our politicians and military leaders and everybody, because, you know, we're not even in the game anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The problem appears to be with YouTube because we are live right now on Facebook and Periscope. So I apologize to our YouTube viewers. We're going to have to figure out what's going on. But we'll still be going live on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moariarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people can always learn more about Jimmy and JoAnne by going over to the newly reinvigorated LibyanWarTheTruth.com. It's got all new underpinnings, and it is fortified against some of the cyber attacks that it's experienced. It is also the place to order Jimmy and JoAnne's DVD, Escape from Al-Qaeda, that details their journeys through Libya. So, sorry to interrupt you guys there, just trying to figure out what these... It's amazing the technical problems that we go through. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, it is.
It's like somebody didn't want us to talk to you.
It's called targeting, Jason. We've been targeted since 2011, since we were in Libya, and our eyewitnesses to the war crimes that were committed by NATO and all the lies used to destroy that country.
But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we've got about Libya. We've also got, at the tail end of the show, we'll be covering a lot of the absolute lies and misrepresentations coming from the banking and financial sector. And
we're going to talk about Texas and the virus that everybody's talking about. I hate to even say it anymore. I'm sick of saying it.
It is such a lie. What they perpetrated on the world, we should be stringing them all up, because what we thought in the first place has now been proven to be true.
There's no rise in infections. What they're doing is, instead of testing 100 people, they're testing 100,000 people.
There's not even a serious
for free.
Annual
They're encouraging
flu.
everybody to go in for free. Anybody who goes into a doctor or dentist or anybody now has to be tested. Doesn't matter. And they're testing for antibodies. They're testing for antibodies. And it's, you know,
they've expanded.
Is becoming draconian, Jason.
If there was one person that tested positive, they're now listing it at 16.
There's a lot of that going on, guys. I don't know if you saw this, but Minnesota State Senator Scott Jensen, who's also a medical doctor, he was very early in speaking out that the Minnesota Department of Health had sent some guidelines that he found to be not medically sound. And he's just released another video today that now he's being investigated by the state for spreading misinformation, when in fact he has been spreading information that is widely publicized. He's actually spreading sensible information. This video here, I saw it earlier, and he's explaining what what this complaint is all about and where it may have originated from. They don't tell him where it originated from, but this is very troubling. I've been trying to get in touch with Dr. Jensen, and I'm going to make a even more concerted effort. Yeah, very strange. Neither of the YouTube channels are playing our show right now, but hopefully
Jason,
people are watching.
Let's look at why would these criminal leaders of all these countries and all the banks, why would they crash the economies over a phony, absolute phony pandemic.
It's a hoax.
Why would they do it? It's because they're covering up the crash of their fiat money, their toilet paper systems.
They're criminal.
They're covering up their sins, and so they've shut everything down. And things are not going to ever be the same again because the money crash is so massive. 1.6 quintillion of phony money has been put into the marketplace. They bought 70 to 80% of the world with their toilet paper money. And they've been caught finally, and the world is not accepting this anymore. And so to cover this up, they knew it was going to happen. They knew eventually they're going to be caught with their hand in the cookie jar. So they planned this because a flu virus rolls around every year. So they said, well, when it gets that bad, we'll just cover the whole thing up and make a big, big, big deal out of a no event. And that's what they've done. And they have ruined everybody's economy.
Yeah,
they've caused everybody to spend all their money.
Henry Macau sent today. Henry Macau put out an article that said the Rothschilds owe reparations to the world.
Yeah, which they do.
Trillions of dollars of reparations for all the wars they've created, for all the money they've stole, for all the illegal money they've printed, and for the economic attacks on countries illegally. It goes on and on.
They own 160 countries, including the United States.
But I want to say about that doctor you were talking about, Jason.
Yeah, Scott
people
Johnson.
who are telling the truth is now becoming against the law.
Right.
And I see the governor of Texas says because it's been proven that these masks stop the spread. Okay, show me the scientific evidence. Right. They just spread a lie. They just say a lie. They don't have any scientific evidence. They just say it, and then everybody says,
in fact,
"Oh, the governor says this." So,
in fact, the medical evidence is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
The opposite. And they defend these masks left, right, and center, and they are actually a health hazard. And by everybody putting a mask on, what they've done is they're committing psychological warfare, and they know that everybody put on a mask has bought into the lie. So we control this idiot. We control that idiot. The ones without a mask, they know that they haven't controlled that. And when you see Gates and his wife sitting up there and said, well, people didn't take this COVID-19 very seriously, but the second wave, they're really going to have to take it. Ha, ha, ha.
Right.
This is sickening. And Fauci, this criminal, this sorry bastard,
it's a scheme,
has now said that the next round is going to look more like the flu, the swine flu or Spanish flu. That sorry bastard in 2005 was the one responsible.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So, that criminal bastard should be put down today. And here he is. He's been 36 years advising the government of the United States. Wake up, people. He is a criminal. He is a sorry eugenist, and absolutely does not deserve to be walking on this earth.
Listen to this first sentence. This is from the CDC's own website about this 2005 reconstruction of the 1918 influenza pandemic. It says CDC researchers and their colleagues successfully reconstructed the influenza virus that caused the 1918 to 1919 flu pandemic, which killed as many as 50 million people. Oh, it's like, well, congratulations. Why the hell did you do that?
I know, exactly. And if 50 million people did we wear masks then? Were we social distancing?
There was actually, we did hear, there was something about masks being employed during this. But again, I think there's a lot that we really don't know, or at least that I don't know about the 1918 Spanish flu. There have been things, I've heard whispers that it also might have been somehow related to vaccines. I don't want to say too much about it until I get more information, but there's a lot of strange things about this 1918 to 1919 influenza pandemic. Maybe even that it was just 100 years ago. Perhaps dopes like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci were reminiscent for a pandemic. But I cannot imagine what the scientific purpose is of, resuscitating this virus.
Yeah, there was an article put out today, or not today, but recently, that Nazi Germany, they started their mess with a pandemic.
Yeah. But Jason, whenever they first of all tried to sell us this pandemic based on a know-nothing kind of a flu. And now then the second time around may be one that is weaponized and includes the 1919 really deadly virus. It may include the I'm not trying to spread fear, but that's what Fauci's trying to do.
Yeah.
Why else would he stand up and say the next one may look like the
it's because they have to use fear. It's their tool to control people. And you know, that like the guy, somebody put a meme out that was great. It says, okay, we all have to stay home now until nobody ever dies again.
People are going to die in their homes.
Exactly. But the point is, we're also scared we're going to get this and die. And now Europe has come out and said nobody has died from the COVID. The majority of all people who have died, all of them, they said, had some other disease they died from.
There were 17
They may
countries.
have had the COVID, but they died from the other disease.
There was a serious medical evaluation done in 17 countries. All these doctors were not being paid. They weren't on any agenda. They were trying to find the truth. And they said they could not find a single case. There were a lot of deaths. Single death. There were a lot of deaths where the people had pneumonia and they were tested positive for the antibodies, but they died really of a disease like cancer or tuberculosis or
diabetes
whatever
or something.
And but and this was 17 countries. This was not Fauci and Bill Gates and the criminals running the test. And they said that they did not have a single death proven.
But it's real clear, Jason. There's been man on this planet for a lot of centuries, and there hasn't been any big panic. There hasn't been. We go through the Black Plague. We go through all kinds of things. It's what we live with. We have a natural immune system that works, and you get out in the sun and you eat good food, and your immune system works very well. It fights all these things every day.
They got to make China the bad guy, so they said it came from Wuhan. This sorry bastard Fauci was in Wuhan at that lab in November.
Yeah.
Did that sorry bastard bring it back to the United States and spread it out?
Nancy Pelosi there too?
We heard Nancy Pelosi was there.
Wow, she's probably buying ice cream for $15.
There you go.
I don't know if you guys, I had never heard of this guy before, but I still subscribe to Variety, which is like the Hollywood trade publication. So this guy, Nick Cordero, who's a Broadway actor, he died at 41 after coronavirus complications. That headline just struck me as weird, so I started looking into this a bit. And he's been in a lot of different Broadway shows. His wife, Amanda Klutz, made a sad statement on Instagram. But I mean, this guy at 41 had such horrendous complications. They were talking about his leg was amputated while he was in the hospital.
He had diabetes or something.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's because aside from being much younger than the people that we've heard about, we haven't heard about anybody having their legs amputated as a result of coronavirus. They were talking about this guy.
It's an upper respiratory problem.
I guess because of blood clots or bleeding or whatever, but they were talking about the possibility of him having a double lung transplant. It just, something seems very strange about that story.
No, he could have had HIV.
There's
a whole lot of things could be wrong.
Yeah, Ron Paul came out today with a report from his site, and he's a medical doctor. And he said, the sad thing is he said they've blown these numbers completely out of reason. And he said, there's one case that he saw where a man died in a car wreck, and he was attributed to be a COVID-19 victim. And he said they're lying about all this. And he said when they're lying, you have to look at the reason for the lies. And really the reason for the lies and the reason to destroy all our economies and everything is to cover up their sins, their financial, really dramatic sins.
Well, they want the New World Order.
It's amazing how they're digging in, right? I mean, we hear people like Ron Paul. I mean, Scott Jensen, he's in the government. He's a medical doctor. He's reading documentation from the Minnesota Department of Health, and they're investigating him for that.
Because he's putting out the truth. It's the truth has become, wasn't it
heresy.
1984? George Orwell said, when the truth becomes, you can be arrested for telling the truth. Then he said, you've fallen into the pit.
There's something about the truth is revolutionary. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then I think there's another George Orwell quote, like on the wall at the BBC, where they have this gigantic statue of him that says, freedom is having the ability to tell people things they don't want to hear or something like that, which is, we've seen a huge repression of that in the past few years, and now it's really manifesting itself in these emboldened crowds of college-aged insurgents. Let's call them what they are. They're destroying statues, which, look, I mean, even if you despise the person who the statue is of, when I saw that statue of Christopher Columbus being destroyed in Baltimore, when it hit the ground and the head broke off and the thing shattered, I had a reaction that I did not expect. I was very disturbed by it, not only because, I mean, look, we could debate Christopher Columbus and what he did and all that, but that item as a work of historical art just being destroyed, I mean, it's literally the work of barbarians. Taking it down, if people vote that that's what they want to do, it could still be studied and observed either from a historical standpoint, an art history standpoint. It was a treacherous act.
Yeah, it's the destruction of your country, illegal destruction. And, you know, they did that, I think, in Russia when they took down the Tsar. They've done it in a lot of countries. It's a Marxist event where they remove the history.
But, you know, whenever they prevent you from going to your church or your synagogue, but they allow you to go to the liquor store, you're being screwed. You're being screwed and renewed. When you can't go pray, when you can't have a family get together, but you can go to Costco or you can go to Walmart,
right?
Then you're being screwed.
Yeah. And you know, when I meant to mention this on Sunday, Jimmy, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was walking down to Washington Square Park to meet Charles, I walked by, there's a very big church there on Fifth Avenue, and it said they have closed the church for COVID-19. So someone's saying Christopher Columbus was a murderer. You know what? That could be said about any president of any country, anyone who's ever been in any war. And I'm not making any kind of moral judgment of Christopher Columbus. I'm just saying an organized, civilized society that wants to propose a change does it in a civilized manner. An angry mob that destroys something doesn't fly with me. It's not really the way things should be done.
And these are the same people that are perfectly happy to see 50, 60, 70 million babies aborted in the United States all in the last few years.
There was a video out where a girl was in a parking lot, and these Black Lives Matter, they were black women that went up to her and banged on her door. She was just sitting there in the parking lot and started yelling at her how she was a racist and and she said, "Get away from my car. We're not getting away." You know, and this was all being videotaped, and she got a gun out and she stood out and she held her gun out and she said, "You get away from me. You get away from my car." Well, they want to get rid of all the police. Well, as soon as she got the gun out, she said, "Call the police." The Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Call the police. Call the police. What? You want to get rid of the police? What are you doing?
I mean,
Call
right.
the police.
And if you attack somebody and they have a gun, it's certainly their right to defend themselves. People might also remember that when I tried to have a civilized conversation with some Black Lives Matter supporters in the street, they called the police and lied to them to try to get me in trouble. So pretty bad form. We're almost out of time here, and I apologize to YouTube viewers. I'm not sure what the issue is with YouTube Live right now, but we have been broadcasting on Facebook, on DLive, on Periscope, and our various other platforms. And in just about 5 minutes, we're going to continue with the sponsor-exclusive show on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moariarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If you're just tuning into the broadcast, don't forget to check out LibyanWarTheTruth.com. That is Jimmy and JoAnne's free website, and that's the spot where you can order their DVD. It's important to remember that sponsors of Jimmy and JoAnne on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moariarty are going to get free shipping when they order the DVD for $15. That's a $5 savings and a great way to access all this information. Jimmy and JoAnne took all these photographs and gathered all this information themselves. So you're not going to see this anywhere else, except for certain select items that have been shown throughout the history of our sponsor-exclusive show. This is material that a lot of people don't want you to have an opportunity to look at. I haven't, as far as I know, received any warnings from YouTube. I think the channel is in good standing, so I don't know what's going on, just some sort of temporary technical problem. But we'll be back in just 5 minutes with the sponsor-exclusive segment. sponsor exclusive segment. And Jimmy and JoAnne, I'll see you there in just a few minutes.
Okay, Jason, thanks.
Thanks everybody for watching.